Hi everyone, welcome. So if you're in the Salesforce world, you know the struggle is real when it comes to keeping your data clean. Today, we're going to jump into one of the most powerful and honestly, one of the simplest tools you have to win that fight, Salesforce Validation Rules.
Okay, let me ask you something straight up. Think about your Salesforce org right now. Is your data really reliable? I mean, do you trust it? Is it accurate? Is it complete? If you had to pause for even a second there, you know exactly why we're talking about this. Bad data, man, it is a silent killer for productivity. But what if you could stop that bad data before it even gets into the system? Just imagine having a little automated gatekeeper stand in guard, checking every single piece of information, making sure it meets your standards. That's the big idea we're going to unpack. And that brings us right to Salesforce's own built-in gatekeepers, validation rules. These things are your first line of defense, and honestly, they're often your best line of defense for keeping your data in check and making sure your business rules are followed, all without writing a single line of code.
So what even is a validation rule when you get right down to it? Well, it's just a logical formula, a little test that you create, and it runs every single time a user tries to save a record. If the data fails your test, the rule just stops the save. It won't let it through until the user fixes it. It's what we call a declarative tool, which is just a fancy way of saying you build it with clicks, not with complicated code.
Now, the real magic behind all of this? It's actually incredibly simple. Every single validation rule, no matter how complex it looks, boils down to one simple question. Is the result true or is it false? If your formula comes back true, that means, Houston, we have a problem. The rule has found an error and the save gets blocked. If the formula comes back false, you're golden. Everything's good to go and the save succeeds. That's it. That's the whole game. Okay, so the logic is simple, right? But how do you actually, build one of these things? Turns out every single rule is made up of 5 core pieces. So let's pop the hood and take a look at the anatomy of a rule to see how it all works. Here they are, the big 5. You've got your rule name, gotta be unique, then the description, and seriously, always fill this out. Future you will thank you, I promise. Then you have the error condition formula, which is really the brains of the operation. And finally, the error message your user sees and the error location. And a pro tip here, always try to put it right on the field that has the problem. It just makes for a way better user experience. All right, enough theory, right? Let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. We're going to look at a couple of super common business problems and see how these 5 parts come together to solve them. So here's a classic. I'm sure you've run into this. The business decides that any time an account gets marked as a customer, we absolutely have to have a phone number. We can't have our sales reps creating these important accounts without any contact info. So how do we enforce that? And boom, here's the logic. This formula is just saying 2 things. First, check if the account type pick list is set to customer. And second, check if the phone field is blank. If both of those conditions are true at the same time, the whole formula returns true. And as we just learned, true means we've found an error and the save gets blocked. It's simple, it's easy to read, and it works perfectly. Oh man, here's another one. We've all seen it happen. A user is entering data and they accidentally put in a project start date that's actually after its end date. That's, logically impossible, and it completely messes up your reports. We need a rule to stop that from ever happening. And just look at how clean this is. The entire formula is simply, is the start date greater than the end date? If that statement is true, the rule fires, blocks the save. It's a perfect example of how your logic doesn't need to be super complicated to prevent some major data headaches. Now, these examples are absolutely perfect for validation rules, but you might be wondering, what about more complex stuff? Like, what if you need to check data on a completely different object? Well, that's when you have to start thinking about whether a validation rule is still the right tool for the job, or if you need to bring in the heavy machinery, like an apex trigger. This table really breaks it down. Validation rules are no code, they're great for system performance, and they handle conditional logic beautifully. Apex triggers? Well, they require a developer to write code, and they're really meant for those super complex situations. So here's the golden rule, the big takeaway. Always try to solve the problem with a declarative tool like a validation rule first. Only reach for code when you've got no other choice. All right, let's bring it all home. As we start to wrap this up, let's just boil everything we've learned down into a quick little playbook. If you follow these best practices, your validation rules are going to be effective, easy to manage, and a lot less frustrating for your users. First, keep those formulas as simple and readable as you can. Second, and I'm going to say it again, always write a clear description. Trust me. Third, use those field-level error messages to point your users exactly where the problem is. Also, make sure you test your rules with different user profiles to make sure you don't accidentally block someone who shouldn't be blocked. And finally, try not to go crazy. Piling dozens of rules on one object can actually slow things down because Salesforce has to check every single one every time someone hits save.
If you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this simple equation right here. Validation rules are where your business logic meets the need for great data quality. And you get to do it all with absolutely zero code. They are, without a doubt, a cornerstone of any healthy Salesforce org. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you have this tool in your back pocket, think about your own company. What's that one piece of bad data that just drives you nuts? What's the first broken process that you are now going to go fix with your new gatekeeper?